So tell me now, does the type of clothing a woman wears somehow suggest that she's inviting sexual advances?
Yes, 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 a resounding yes. Look here. Do you see how prostitutes dress? Has anyone ever seen a prostitute who is on the job in a very long skirt to the ankle? The way a woman dresses says something about the woman. Whether we want to admit it or not, a woman's dress sends a message not only to men, but to other women also. Yes, the answer is yes. Hi there, greetings to the Unusual Grace family. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you. If you are new around here and you have just subscribed, I so appreciate you. God bless you and welcome back to another video. If you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to this channel and click the notification bell so that you will be notified whenever there is new content. All right, let's dive right in.
Should women cover themselves up to protect themselves from sexual predators? And of course, the story of the day, should we make all our schoolgirls wear skirts down to their ankles to protect them from sexual harassment?
We need to unpack this. Should women cover themselves up to protect themselves from sexual predators? And should our schoolgirls wear long skirts in order to be protected as well? Let's unpack this. I thought it was very interesting the other day when I was watching. I saw a clip from All Angles, one of our Jamaican TV talk show program that discusses topical issues and so on, and bring on all the experts to talk. And it was very surprising to me that we were still having the conversation about long skirts for schoolgirls. And I thought it would have been important for us to put some perspective on this, because somewhere along the line, there might just be an agenda. And one has to wonder, what is that agenda?
School principal Emily Lawrence Ricketts told the Jamaica Observer that, quote, "We have a number of predators who molest the young girls in taxis and buses. What we are trying to do is use the uniform as a deterrent. When the uniforms are short, the predators tend to touch the students," end quote.
Okay, now that kind of reasoning is very, very flawed. Very, very flawed. To say that the uniform can be used as a deterrent. Is anybody wondering, like I am, about the focus of this conversation? I think that there is a problem. And if according to this principle, the problem is that our young girls, schoolgirls, are being targets for sexual predators, if that is the problem, how should we go about addressing this problem? If that is the problem, shouldn't we be talking to our young girls about how to protect themselves when they travel on public transportation? Shouldn't we be talking to our girls about how to be alert and aware of their surroundings? Shouldn't we be talking to our girls about how to be assertive in saying no if anyone makes advances at them that makes them feel uncomfortable? Shouldn't we be talking to our girls about who they should contact immediately if they are violated? Shouldn't we be having that conversation if we were really concerned about our young schoolgirls being targets for sexual predators? Something is wrong. This kind of reasoning is flawed. To say that you're using the uniform as a deterrent. How can uniform be a deterrent to sexual predators? Might I add that the research has shown, I have done some reading and I will share some of it here. The research has shown that the majority, in very often, and in particular Jamaica and maybe elsewhere in the world too, the perpetrators of sexual abuse among children, or those who abuse children sexually, the perpetrators are usually friends of the family. They're usually known to the victim, and sometimes they are relatives as well. This is not a uniform issue. This is not a length of skirt issue. This has to do with the structure of the family and how it has broken down and how we are promoting this kind of culture where we want to communicate to our girls that you should be able to do whatever you want to do, dress the way how you want to dress, and you shouldn't have to take responsibility for any of it. That kind of thinking, my friends, is the wrong kind of thinking. Listen to this.
And Professor Palmadisa, let me start with you, because it seems to me we have perhaps two issues, well, whole heap of issues, but we have what people believe about women's clothing, and then we have the reality of how women's clothing actually affects sexual predators or not. So let's start with attitudes and beliefs and what it is people think a woman is portraying by what she chooses to put on. What do we know?
Well, first I want to say that the focus is very wrong. So the focus is on the potential victim rather than the predator.
So let's talk about that. The focus is on the potential victim rather than on the predator. And I think that I've heard this argument before. And whenever we are discussing important matters that have to do with males and females, there is this kind of talk about putting the focus on the victim and all of that. Now, let's be clear. The perpetrator of any kind of crime, especially against children, they must pay for their actions. They must get the full extent of the law. We're not disagreeing with that. All right? They must get the full extent of the law. But we need to also speak to the potential victims. They need to be focused on as well. And I want to say that, parents have a responsibility to talk to their young girls and their young boys, their sons and their daughters, about how to navigate as they travel, if they are taking public transportation, and even if they go to school, whether public school or private school, parents need to be having these conversations, because it doesn't matter where they are, they once they leave your home, the safety and the protection of your home, given that there is no perpetrator within your home, they are exposed. There is the potential, there is the possibility that someone could try to prey on them. All right. So parents need to be having this conversation. And if parents are not having this conversation, the next place that the conversation must go to is within the school. So just coming in with a long uniform without having the conversation, it's not going to do anything. Here's the sad reality. The sad reality is that many of our teenage girls and boys, because there's that too. Some of the girls and the boys, it's not always a big man, an adult male with the young girls. Sometimes it is the same age group as well. The sad reality is that some of our girls invite, encourage, initiate, appreciate, and enjoy being fondled, touched, the attention that they get, the feel good, all of that. Some of them do. So it's a mindset that we need to be addressing.
Now, we have for a very long time, and there have been studies, not necessarily in the Caribbean, that has looked at clothing. And one of the things we know that, first of all, a rapist is not raping a woman because he's attracted to her or because she looks sexy. Rape is a form of terror and control. It's about power.
We've heard this argument, but I have heard this argument before as well. And I want to add to that, because the latest research is saying otherwise. Rape is not just about power. It is about power and control and terror, abuse, violation. But rape is also about sex. It is about sex and power. All right? So let's get that. Let us get that clear.
And so men or boys who rape, that's what they're about. They're not necessarily attracted to the woman. So it doesn't really matter what women wear. We know that women in the Middle East who wear burqas have been raped. We know that the girls who were kidnapped in Nigeria, I think about 5 years ago, they were all dressed in long clothes.
First of all, in the Middle East, it is the norm for women based on religious reasons to dress in a particular way. So when everybody looks a particular way or dresses a particular way, you don't really stand out because they don't have the freedom to dress how they want to dress because of the strong religious beliefs that exist within that culture. So yes, it is a fact that if someone decides to rape an individual, it doesn't matter what they are wearing. But I don't think that really should be the conversation. We're not talking about rape, are we? Maybe we are. But what I think that this whole discussion is about, or should be about, because the whole discussion is about long skirts, which I think we need to stop this thing. Why are we discussing skirts down to the ankle as opposed to very short skirt? Why is no one saying just below the knees or just on top of the knees? Why is nobody talking about something more suitable, average, moderate? We are on extremes of the discussion. Very, very long or very, very short. All right? But we're talking, as far as I know, I have not heard any reports like that. But as far as I know, girls are not being raped in buses or in taxis. But touch goes on. And in some cases, depending, sexual intercourse goes on as well, or some kind of fondling or other kinds of activities. But I do not know of any rape taking place within a public transportation vehicle. No. With that said, that's another extreme of the argument to say that it doesn't matter what the woman is wearing, because if a man wants to rape her, it doesn't matter what she's wearing. Now, there is truth to that statement. But that should not be the argument when we're talking about what our young girls should wear. And again, as I had pointed out, that is not even really the issue. What the real issue is, we should be addressing it in a different way, not with the uniform thing.
We know that whether you're wearing a long skirt or a pant, if a man wants to make a pass at you or to be obnoxious, he is, and he does. And in Jamaica, that kind of toxic masculinity has been allowed, where a lot of men and young boys feel that they could just touch women regardless of what they're wearing.
That is true. Toxic masculinity. There are some men who think that it's okay to just touch a woman who might be passing by, and he likes how her shape, likes her look, like the way she looks in her clothes. I have seen it. Men have tried that with me, and I do not dress like what they're discussing. I do not dress. I try my best to be modest in my dressing. Let me put it that way. And I've seen that. Okay. So that is a fact. That is a fact within our culture, that there are some men, not all of them now, some men who think it's okay to touch a woman, you know, if they feel like doing it, and the woman should be okay with it. And some boys as well. I have observed that.
So this issue of clothing is something that has come up repeatedly, whereas the victim then becomes is guilty because of what her body looks like or what she's wearing. But there's really no data that substantiates that the way a woman looks, the clothes that she's wearing, is a cause for rape.
Right. So there's no data to substantiate. That is true. But this conversation is devoid of responsibility. A woman really should not just be irresponsible in the way that she dresses. Let's be real. There is a dress code. When I go to work, I can't walk into work in a bathing suit, and neither do I go to the beach in a business suit. Right? So there is a dress code to be and the fact of the matter is, let's take work and the beach out of it. Okay, let's take work and the beach out of it. If I were to dress, or any woman for that matter, were to dress in a particular way, it is sending a message. And I want to ask every woman who is listening to this message right now, what message do you send when you put your clothes on and go out of your house? What message do you think people send? Is it that you don't care? Is there anyone who would really say that they don't care about, I mean, you might say what people say doesn't affect you. But when you put your clothes on and look in the mirror, you're thinking, I look good today. And if somebody compliments you, you appreciate it, you say thank you, and so on. We often think about the people we are going to interact with when we put on our clothes. Think about it. Think about it. But anyway, let's get back on track. A woman must never be blamed for any kind of violation that comes to her from another person. But a woman must always take responsibility for what she wears. Always. You must be responsible for what you wear and what you put on. And we live in community, we exist in community, and we live in a culture, and whether we want to admit it or not, our culture has certain dictates, and there are certain modes of dressing that sends a particular message in our culture. So we have to be responsible. This is not to say that you're not free to wear what you want to wear. But if what you wear invites unwanted attention, attention that makes you feel uncomfortable on anywhere on the spectrum you are, you chose to put that clothes on. All right? Now, we do not have any control over what another person will do. And another person, in the same way, you must be responsible for what you wear as a woman. A man must be responsible for his actions as well. And he must not, just by looking at what a woman has on, think that this is an invitation for anything at all. If he is not married to the woman, doesn't know her or anything like that. All right? So we're not supporting that at all. Women must be responsible. Men must be responsible. Responsibility is missing from this conversation. That's my opinion.
Let me ask you, Dr. Campbell, attitudes towards women's dress, and do we see a difference in terms of how men perceive women based on what they're wearing as opposed to how women perceive other women?
So yes, so in agreement with Prof, I think if a man is aroused by the skin on someone's knee, I don't think the knee or the woman is the problem. The problem is the man and the attitudes that he has been raised with.
Lyrics. That is just lyrics. Notice that he hasn't answered the question that Dion asked. Now, a man is aroused by the skin on a woman's knees. Okay. Well, certainly maybe that man has a little problem, but the skin on a woman's leg, and it doesn't have to be any skin at all. What if the clothing she has on is skin tight? It's just her shape, her walk, her swag, maybe her smell, her scent. Several things could get the man aroused, but that doesn't mean that he needs to be aroused. He could see her, admire her as being attractive or someone who he thinks looks attractive, and then he moves on. But all right.
Right? And realistically speaking, the data would suggest that it really doesn't matter what she wears. And in fact, especially in this very heavily pornified culture that we have.
Heavy what?
Pornified.
I've never heard that word.
And the reality is 75 to 95% of young boys, men, consume pornography. And there's a wide range from schoolgirl and all of these things. So what the woman wears is not the issue, it's the objectification of the woman, right? Hegemonic masculinity, the need to dominate the woman. So it really doesn't matter how high, how low, the length, none of that matters. And again, if it is that an individual is aroused based on 2 inches more or less, then we are putting the focus on the wrong place, right? And even within this context of the school uniform, now we could understand religious reasons and the right for an individual to decide what to wear and all of those things. But as it is framed now, to say that a longer skirt, and interestingly, the large emphasis on the female or the girl's uniform over another area of focus as a deterrent is interesting, to say the least. Terrifying if we're looking at the other end of the spectrum.
All right. So I think the point has been made, and we can agree that it doesn't matter what the woman wears. I think the point has been made, and we can agree it doesn't matter what the woman wears. It doesn't matter what the woman wears. If a man wants to violate, he is going to find a way to do that. But again, I believe that the focus of the conversation is different. What we need to do in this discussion is to identify what exactly the problem is. Because what I think is underlying this whole debate about long skirts is just this ideology that women should do whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it, however they want to do it, and not take any responsibility for how people respond to them. All right. And I know that many people will disagree with me. I know that this conversation can go on and on and on. And I'm just sharing some initial thoughts. I'm sure after this video, I'm going to think of a few more things, but I want us to kind of get it right. I want us to get it right. You understand? Because the fact of the matter is, we are on extremes of the conversation. And I think that we need to bring it home by first identifying what the problem is and addressing the problem accordingly. Now, it seems to me, based on what that principal said, the principal said that they are trying to implement the long uniform so as to prevent or use it as a deterrent, rather, a deterrent for taxi men or bus men, or when the children are on the bus, for men to touch them or abuse them or sexually assault them. I don't know how, because the skirts they can lift up the skirts if they want to, but let's leave that alone. All right, so let's say that that is the problem. Well, hear me good. You know, I remember when I was a little girl, when I was in high school, there was a time when in the news, we had a short period of some criminal men who were kidnapping teenage girls, just kidnapping girls, kidnapping children, coming home from school. They would drive up in this white Toyota Corolla by the bus stop, and, you know, a door would open and they would grab, you know, somebody or whatever. That was going on at some point when I was in high school. And I can still remember my mother always had these conversations at home. She would tell us how to conduct ourselves on the road in order to be safe, how to be alert, how to watch our surroundings, what we need to do. I was told things like, when going into a taxi, if you're going to take a taxi, make sure that it is a licensed taxi, a red plate. Take note of the license plate number and make sure that somebody knows where you are. So I used to send a text message, you know, school is over now, I'm heading so and so, just to ensure that I'm always, you know, that somebody is aware, a family member is aware of where I am, you know, every step of the way. Things like those. You know, she told me if someone were to attack me while I'm on the road, what to do. And there were so many other things that my mother would have sat down with us and she told us so that we were aware. So when I was on public transportation, for example, sometimes it is best by observation not to go on a certain bus. If you're taking a taxi, and maybe if a student is by herself, she probably shouldn't. But let's say taxis are the only things that are on that route. You don't have many buses that come there on that route, because some routes are like that, and she's taking a taxi. If when she's going in the taxi, only one man is in the taxi or only men are in the taxi, don't go in that one, because you would be the only girl and you don't know if they're working together. So things like those are the conversations we should be having with our young girls, if that really is our concern. Not about if your skirt should be all the way down to your ankle or should it be short. And I want to just say this on a point of information. We need to understand as ladies, and we should help our young girls to understand as they are growing up, that how you dress sends a message. As a matter of fact, this doesn't apply to women alone. It applies to men also. How a man carries himself, how a man dresses himself sends a message. It sure does. For example, right now, many of our men, it's probably a fashion thing now, But we have a lot of men who are wearing really, really, really tight jeans. Some of them are not even jeans material. They just look like tights. You know, like those ones that the fishermen wear when they're going out to sea. That's how I see some men dressing when they're going out. No, a man dressed like that with a mohawk in his hair and so on, and he's probably 46 and he has an earring there and all of that, that sends a message about the kind of man that is at 46 years old, wearing a mohawk, you're not an entertainer, and your pants is as tight as the 16-year-old boy. It sends a message. A man who puts on a suit, dresses up in a necktie, that sends a message. It sends a message. It sends a message. It sends a message. Now, it depends on where you want to take the message. Please note, I am not necessarily implying that the dress will tell you everything about the character of the person. Okay, so I cannot look at a person's dress and determine if they are honest or if they are dishonest. No, but it certainly tells you something about their belief system, how they care. It tells you something about them. You can decide. Now, what it tells you about the person might not be what it tells me about that person. So at the end of the day, it can be subjective. But if you've lived a little life and you've been around and you understand your culture very well, you could learn a little bit more by looking at the way a person chooses to dress without being subjective. Some people dress in a way that will tell you about their lifestyle and their lifestyle choices and how they choose to do some things. All right? So let us tell our girls that they need to know that they are responsible for what they put on. And if our young girls want to show some skin, well, as Christians, we don't support that kind of thinking, generally speaking. All right? Because it pulls the attention of people who are looking at you in a different way than if you were fully clothed. Now you can dress and look 21st century, modern, fashionable, and still look modestly beautiful, elegant, gorgeous as a young woman. Yeah, you can. And you know, one of the things that you need to realize, and I remember when I was a teenager, and maybe even now as an adult, depending on who you're talking with, when a woman dresses in a particular way, she could be having a conversation with a man who is not even looking in her eyes, looking in her face. He is looking all over her body. He might be looking down in her bosom. He might be looking at how she is shaped. He might be looking at all that. Some men do that. I am not about broad brushing men because there are some real godly men out there. I know a few of them. There are some gentlemen who are very disciplined and so on. I know a few of them. So I'm talking about some men, the caliber of men, right? And as opposed to when you're fully clothed, a man will be more interested in your personality, you know, if he's that type of person, than he is in your in what you have to offer with your physical body. So we need to tidy up this conversation. We need to tidy up this conversation. We really need to tidy up this conversation. But I would like to know what you think. Do you think that the length of the skirt is really a deterrent to sexual predators? What do you think? What do you think? I want to encourage parents, mothers, fathers, to speak with your daughters, open up the conversation and talk with your daughters about, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate in terms of touch. Because the fact is, sometimes our children are befriended by adults, and unbeknownst to us, they have other intentions. And so this needs to be a regular conversation that we have with our children in order for them to be alert and to know when someone is making an inappropriate advance towards them. Because sometimes children can become confused and I have seen situations where it's only after a few years have passed that, some people realize that they were actually being abused. Because for a child who is someone that they know, someone that they're fond of, and they start to touch them in little ways, rubbing the hand maybe on the thigh, laughing with them, talking with them, it feels good. And so they can't separate the two. And so the conversation is very, very important for them to have. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I just really wanted to share, my thoughts, share my heart on this matter, how I was thinking. What do you think? Do you think the length of our schoolgirls' skirts would be a deterrent to sexual predators? Do you think the conversation is misplaced? What do you think about, the whole debate, the conversation? Of course, I like to leave you with a word. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. If you have not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. Share this video with someone and hit that like button. Thumbs up, give me a thumbs up. See you next time. And until then, always remember, God speaks.